The faint hum of a refrigerator filled the Harper family's suburban kitchen in the late summer of 2022, where Jake stood unloading a heavy bag of groceries he'd just bought with his own hard-earned money. The linoleum floor cooled beneath his socks as he carefully placed a carton of milk on the counter, the scent of fresh oranges, packaged bread, and a block of cheddar cheese mixing with the stale air of a house stretched thin by financial strain. His parents' voices drifting in from the living room, a low murmur of worry about bills they couldn't pay. Their words a constant reminder of why Jake had moved back home months ago. His dad's layoff from the factory still a raw wound. His mom's hours as a nurse's aide slashed to part-time, leaving them scrambling to make ends meet. Jake's role as a web developer working grueling hours at a tech startup and freelancing on the side, turning him into the family's lifeline. His hazel eyes softening with a quiet resolve to keep them afloat. His bank account a sacrificial altar for their survival, electricity, internet, groceries, all on his dime. The memory of his mom's initial gratitude still fresh in his mind. Her voice once warm, "You're a blessing. Jake, we don't know what we'd do without you." Her words a comfort he'd clung to in those early days. But now, as he unpacked a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, that warmth felt like a distant dream, the tone in the house shifting like a storm rolling in. Jake's hazel eyes dimming as he overheard his dad's gruff voice from the couch. "Always on that laptop, does he ever help around here?" The comment a jagged jab, sharp and deeply unfair, considering Jake was footing half the bills. His hazel eyes stinging with a quiet hurt as he labeled a pack of cheese sticks for himself. A small act of self-preservation in a house that felt increasingly hostile, only to find them gone the next day, his mom sure cold and dismissive. "Don't be selfish, Jake, we all share here." Her words a quiet betrayal that cut deeper than he'd expected. Jake's hazel eyes narrowing as he swallowed his frustration, the disrespect growing bolder with each passing week. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of coding for a demanding client, Jake's hazel eyes heavy with exhaustion as he walked into the living room, his expensive noise-cancelling headphones vital for his freelance meetings, and a rare splurge he'd allowed himself dangling carelessly from his dad's neck. They were just lying around, his dad muttered when Jake politely asked him to at least ask next time, his dad's scarf slicing through the air. "You act like this whole house belongs to you." The accusation a slap that left Jake reeling, his hazel eyes clouding with a hurt he didn't dare voice, his silence a shield he'd worn for far too long, the little jabs piling up like bricks on his chest, his mom's muttered complaints about him not hopping to her requests fast enough, his dad's snide remarks about his work, all while Jake's bank account reigned to keep the lights on, the fridge stocked, and the internet running, his hazel eyes reflecting a growing unease as he stood in the kitchen that night. The refrigerators hum a lonely soundtrack to his thoughts, the weight of their ingratitude pressing down on him. The house he'd grown up in now feeling like a battlefield, his role as a son twisted into something transactional, his hazel eyes glistening with a quiet pain as he wondered how long he could keep this up, how long he could pour himself into a family that seemed to see him as little more than a resource, how long he could endure the growing resentment, the subtle barbs, the casual dismissal of his sacrifices, wondering if his efforts would ever be enough to earn back the love he'd once felt in this home, wondering if he'd ever feel like he truly belonged in the place he was trying so desperately to save. A faint drizzle tapped against the windows of the Harper family's suburban home, the grey light of a late Friday afternoon filtering through the curtains as Jake pushed open the front door, his shoulders slumped under the weight of a brutal work week, his laptop bag heavy in his hand, the faint scent of his mom's lavender air freshener mixing with the stale tension that had settled into the house like an unwanted guest. His hazel eyes heavy with exhaustion after hours of debugging code for a demanding client, his freelance gigs stretching him thin. The thought of a quiet evening with a hot shower and a frozen pizza, the only thing keeping him going. But as he stepped into the hallway, the air shifted, his MOM standing at the base of the stairs like a sentinel, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her blue eyes narrowed into slits of accusation. "We need to talk, Jake," her voice sharp, a tone he'd heard too many times growing up, the kind that meant a lecture, not a conversation. Jake's hazel eyes blinking in confusion. "Can it wait, I'm beat?" His voice soft, pleading for a reprieve, but her expression didn't soften. No, it can't, her words a command. Jake's hazel eyes dimming as he set his bag down, bracing himself for what was coming, her words tumbling out like a prosecutor's closing argument. You've been disrespectful acting like you own this place, not pulling your weight. Her accusations a barrage, each one hitting harder than the last. Jake's hazel eyes widening in disbelief. What are you talking about? I pay for half the bills. I buy the groceries. I haven't asked for anything. His voice rising, a mix of exhaustion and frustration. But she cut him off, her blue eyes flashing. You're just a guest in this house. Jake, don't act like you belong here. The words a gut punch, slicing through the haze of his fatigue. Guest, after all he'd done. After the electricity bills, the internet, the food he'd put on their table. His hazel eyes trembling with a mix of shock and hurt. His mouth opening to protest, to remind her of his sacrifices. But before he could speak, she turned to the hallway closet, yanking out his suitcase, the one he kept packed for work trips, and hurling it down the stairs. The dull thud as it hit the bottom step echoing in the silent house. Go stay somewhere you're wanted. Her voice cold, like she was shooing a stray dog, not her own son. Jake's hazel eyes frozen on the suitcase, his dad appearing in the doorway behind her, arms folded, his silence louder than any words, a tacit agreement with her cruelty. Jake's hazel eyes glistening with unshed tears as the reality sank in. They were throwing him out, after everything. His voice barely a whisper. You're serious, you really want me gone? The question more to himself than to them. No answer came, just the weight of their rejection. Jake's hazel eyes clouding with numbness. He couldn't shake, his movements mechanical as he climbed the stairs to his room. The familiar creak of the floorboards under his feet, a cruel reminder of the home he thought he had, packing his clothes, his tech gear, a few books, the essentials of his life stuffed into a duffel bag, his hazel eyes scanning the room one last time. The posters on the wall, the desk where he'd spent countless nights working to support them. All of it. Now a memory he couldn't bear to linger on, his hazel eyes steady but hollow as he walked back downstairs, past his parents, their silence deafening, out to his car in the driveway, the drizzle soaking his hoodie as he loaded his bags, the darkness of the evening swallowing him whole, his hazel eyes reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights as he drove to a nearby hotel, booking a room for a few nights, the sterile quiet of the hotel room a stark contrast to the chaos he'd left behind. His hazel eyes staring at the ceiling as he lay on the bed, the weight of their words guessed, not wanted replaying in his mind, a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding, wondering how he'd become a stranger in his own family, wondering where he'd go from here, wondering if he'd ever feel at home again. The sterile glow of a hotel room lamp cast long shadows across the beige carpet, where Jake sat on the edge of the bed with his phone in hand, the faint hum of the air conditioner the only sound in the quiet space, his hazel eyes fixed on the screen as he scrolled through his banking app, the number staring back at him like a ledger of betrayal. Hundreds of dollars each month, electricity, internet, half the grocery bill automatically deducted to keep his parents' house running. A house he'd been thrown out of just the night before. The memory of his mom's words, "You're just a guest," still burning in his chest. His hazel eyes narrowing with a cold resolve he hadn't felt before. His finger hovering over the screen as he paused each payment. Electricity off, internet cancelled, grocery budget reallocated to his own needs, each tap a small act of reclamation. His hazel eyes steady as he closed the app, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He didn't owe them anything, not anymore. The hotel room's silence, a stark contrast to the chaos of his childhood home, his hazel eyes reflecting a flicker of defiance as he leaned back against the headboard, the sterile walls a blank slate for the life he was about to build. A life without their ingratitude, without their entitlement, without the constant guilt they'd heaped on him for years. His hazel eyes drifting to the window, the neon sign of a nearby diner blinking in the distance, a reminder of the world moving on outside, a world he was now free to join. The next morning, as he sipped black coffee from a styrofoam cup in the hotel lobby, his phone lit up with a message from his dad, a single sentence. The power just got shut off. No greeting, no apology, just a statement. Jake's hazel eyes staring at the words, a bitter smirk tagging at his lips, his fingers typing a reply without hesitation. Guess the guest took the electricity with them, his tone sharp, unapologetic. his hazel eyes glinting with a quiet triumph as he hit send and silenced his phone. The messages and calls that followed, 15 from his dad, 4 from his MOM, a handful from aunts and uncles, didn't faze him. His hazel eyes steady as he listened to one voicemail out of curiosity. His mom's voice shrill. "Jake, this isn't funny. Your father had to sit in the dark last night. We couldn't even charge our phones." Her words dripping with blame. "You're sabotaging this family just because you're feeling dramatic." The accusation almost laughable. Jake's hazel eyes darkening as he deleted the message. Her definition of sabotage, meaning he was no longer propping up their lives, their entitlement, a weight he refused to carry anymore. His hazel eyes scanning the lobby as he finished his coffee. The chatter of other guests a reminder of the normalcy he craved, the normalcy he was finally reaching for. A week later, he moved into a short-term rental, a small studio with peeling paint, but a functioning kitchen, his hazel eyes brightening as he unpacked his tech gear. The space his own, no cold shoulders, no muttered complaints, just quiet, his hazel eyes softening as he sat at the tiny dining table, a cheap IKEA lamp casting a warm glow over his laptop. The freedom to breathe without judgment, a luxury he hadn't realized he'd been missing. His hazel eyes reflecting a cautious hope as he started searching for a permanent place. The silence from his family, a double-edged sword, a relief but also a reminder of their indifference. His hazel eyes narrowing as he thought of their reaction to the power outage, the internet loss, the empty fridge they'd now have to fill themselves. Their messages accusing him of abandoning them, of punishing them. But Jake's hazel eyes held no regret. He hadn't abandoned them, they'd abandoned him first. Their words and actions a clear message he'd finally heard. His hazel eyes steady as he closed his laptop, the hum of the city outside his window, a promise of something better. A life where he wasn't a guest. A life where he could finally belong to himself. A life where their chaos couldn't touch him anymore. At least not yet. The faint buzz of a laptop fan filled the small studio apartment Jake had rented. The late morning sun filtering through a cracked window blind, casting slanted rays across the peeling paint of the walls, where Jake sat at his tiny dining table, his hazel eyes scanning an email from the energy company. The subject line urgent. Notice of defaulted account, a jolt to his system. His heart sinking as he opened the message. The words on the screen, a harsh reality check. His name still listed as the primary account holder for his parents' address, despite him cancelling the autopay weeks ago. The overdue bills now racking up penalties under his name, threatening his credit score. His hazel eyes darkening with frustration as he reread the line. Failure to resolve may result in legal action. The oversight, a rookie mistake he hadn't anticipated. His hazel eyes narrowing as he recalled the night. His MOM threw his suitcase down the stairs. Her words, "Go stay somewhere you're wanted," echoing in his mind. A bitter reminder of why he'd walked away. But now their irresponsibility was dragging him back. His hazel eyes steady as he opened a company portal, attempting to update the account name, only to be met with a red error message. Resident signature required. His hazel eyes clouding with a mix of anger and determination. The realization sinking in that he'd have to face his parents again. Not to reconcile, not to explain, but to protect himself. His hazel eyes glinting with resolve as he printed the change of responsibility form. The printers were a mechanical underscore to his racing thoughts. The drive back to his childhood neighborhood a tense journey. The familiar streets lined with maple trees, now feeling foreign. His hazel eyes scanning the house as he pulled into the driveway, the porch light on even in daylight. A wasteful habit his dad always hated, ironically enough, since it ran up the bill Jake used to pay. His hazel eyes steady as he grabbed the form and walked to the door, knocking firmly, the silence that followed stretching long. His hazel eyes narrowing as he knocked again, harder this time, footsteps finally approaching, the door swinging open to reveal his MOM, her arms crossed, her blue eyes cold and accusatory. "What do you want?" Her tone flat, as if he were a stranger. Jake's hazel eyes unwavering as he held up the form. "You need to sign this. You're using the power. You're living here. You take responsibility." His voice calm but firm, her blue eyes glancing at the paper like it was an insult. "I'm not signing anything until you explain why you're acting like this." Her words a spark to Jake's simmering frustration. his hazel eyes flashing with a rare anger. Why I am acting like this? You told me I was just a guest, threw me out like a stray, and now you want me to take the blame for a bill you are not paying. His voice rising, the months of resentment spilling over. Her blue eyes widening briefly before narrowing again. Don't twist this, we never told you to leave. You chose to walk out, and now you're punishing us. Her accusation a twisted version of the truth, Jake's hazel eyes cutting through her. You did tell me to leave, you said go stay somewhere I was wanted. So I did. And now I'm telling you to take responsibility. This isn't revenge. It's consequences. His words a firm line in the sand. His hazel eyes steady as he handed her the form again. Her refusal to take it a silent defiance. His dad appearing in the hallway behind her, arms crossed. Jake, you're overreacting. You didn't have to shut everything off and make this harder. His voice a low grumble. Jake's hazel eyes turning to him, a bitter laugh escaping. I didn't make this hard, I made it fair. You want the lights, the fridge, the Wi-Fi. You pay for them. That's how adulthood works. His tone unyielding, his moans half loud. This is about more than bills, you're breaking this family. Her words a final jab, Jake's hazel eyes darkening. No, you broke it the night you made me feel like nothing more than a tenant. His voice steady. He set the form on the doorstep. Sign it or don't. If you don't, the next late fee is on you. His hazel eyes resolute as he turned to leave, her voice calling his name as he walked away. But he didn't stop, his hazel eyes reflecting the sunlight as he drove off, a lightness settling in his chest with every mile. A week later, an email from the energy company confirmed the transfer. No message from his parents. Just silence, his hazel eyes softening with relief. The last tie severed. A new chapter finally beginning. The soft clatter of a coffee mug against a saucer echoed in the small diner where Jake sat by the window. The late March sun casting a golden hue over the cracked vinyl seats. His hazel eyes scanning the text message from his cousin Sarah. The words on the screen stirring a mix of anger and protectiveness. Your mom's been saying stuff about you, but also about Zoe. The message a spark that reignited the fire of resentment Jake had tried to bury. His hazel eyes narrowing as he read on. Sarah's next text detailing the lies. She's saying Zoe borrowed money from them and never paid it back, that she's been a financial strain. The accusations a twisted mirror of the blame his parents had once placed on him. Jake's hazel eyes darkening as he thought of Zoe, his younger cousin, a quiet 19-year-old college freshman who'd always been kind, helping clean up after family dinners when no one else would. Her vulnerability during spring break couch hopping because her dorms were closed, making her an easy target for his parents' scapegoating. His hazel eyes flashing with a fierce determination. They'd learned nothing from what they'd done to him. Nothing from the consequences. Nothing from the silence he'd given them. Their need for a new victim, a sick pattern he couldn't ignore. His hazel eyes steady as he typed a reply to Sarah. What kind of stuff? What exactly are they saying? His fingers quick, his hazel eyes glinting with a resolve to protect Zoe. Sarah's response quick. They told Aunt Dana that Zoe owes them hundreds. She hasn't even seen them in months. The lie so blatant it made Jake's stomach twist, his hazel eyes reflecting a growing fury as he set his phone down. The diner's hum of conversation fading into the background. His coffee growing cold as he processed the betrayal, not just to him, but to Zoe. His hazel eyes tracing the steam rising from the mug. A plan forming in his mind. Easter brunch at his aunt and uncle's place was the next day. An event he planned to skip. The thought of facing his parents after everything too heavy. But now, his hazel eyes hardening with purpose. He couldn't sit this one out. Not when Zoe needed someone to stand up for her. His hazel eyes steady as he paid the bill and left the diner. The spring air crisp against his skin as he walked to his car. The drive back to his studio apartment a blur of resolve. His hazel eyes scanning his closet for something presentable to wear. Settling on a navy button-up and jeans. The outfit, a small armor for the battle ahead. His hazel eyes reflecting the late afternoon light as he sat on his couch, replaying the memories of his own exile. His mom's words, "You're just a guest," still a raw wound, but also a reminder of why he had to do this. His hazel eyes glistening with a mix of anger and determination. Zoe didn't deserve to be their new punching bag. She didn't deserve the whispers, the blame, the isolation they'd forced on him. His hazel eyes steady as he thought of the brunch, The white plastic tables, the pastel tablecloths, the fruit trays from Costco, all the trappings of a normal family gathering. But beneath it, the same toxicity that had driven him away. His hazel eyes narrowing as he imagined his mom's fake smile, her perfectly ironed blouse, acting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't thrown him out, as if she wasn't now targeting Zoe. His hazel eyes glinting with a fierce resolve. He wasn't going for nostalgia. He wasn't going for reconciliation. He was going for Zoe. His hazel eyes softening as he thought of her shy smile, her quiet strength, the way she'd always been there in small ways. His hazel eyes steady as he prepared himself for the confrontation. The brunch a battlefield. He was ready to step onto her, not for himself, but for the cousin who needed him. His hazel eyes reflecting the fading light of the day. A quiet vow to set things right, to break the cycle of blame, to show Zoe she wasn't alone, no matter what storm his parents tried to brew. The faint scent of deviled eggs and fresh-cut grass wafted through the air at Aunt Dana's backyard Easter brunch, where white plastic tables with pastel tablecloths dotted the lawn. The hum of family chatter a deceptive veneer of normalcy. But Jake felt the tension beneath it all as he stepped out of his car, his hazel eyes scanning the gathering. The weight of his decision to attend pressing against his chest, his navy button-up slightly wrinkled from the drive, his hazel eyes locking onto Zoe sitting alone at a table near the back, her earbuds in, scrolling on her phone, her small frame hunched as if shielding herself from the whispers, his hazel eyes softening with a protective resolve, his mom's voice cutting through the air. She placed a tray of fruit on the main table, her perfectly ironed blouse a stark contrast to the chaos she'd caused. Everyone, help yourselves, her tone falsely cheerful, acting as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't thrown Jake out, as if she wasn't now targeting Zoe. Jake's hazel eyes narrowing as he walked towards Zoe, the grass soft under his sneakers. Hey, his voice gentle, Zoe's eyes widening with a flicker of relief. You came? Her voice small but hopeful, Jake's hazel eyes steady. You okay? His question sincere, Zoe's shrug hesitant. I'm laying low, your mom's been weird, her words confirming what Jake already knew, his hazel eyes flashing with a steely determination. He wasn't here for pleasantries. He was here to set things right. His hazel eyes scanning the yard, his dad at the grill, his sister taking selfies with the kids, his MOM pouring juice like a suburban queen, everyone pretending not to notice the tension. Jake's hazel eyes hardening as he made his decision. Come on, he said to Zoe, his voice firm. You're not hiding while they trash you. Zoe's hesitation clear, but she followed, her steps tentative, Jake's hazel eyes resolute. As he walked to the main table, picking up a cake knife and tapping it against a plate, clink clink clink, the sound cutting through the chatter, heads turning. Hey, sorry to interrupt. His voice loud, steady. I just wanted to say a few words. A collective sigh rippling through the relatives, his MOM freezing mid-step, her blue eyes wide with shock, Jake's hazel eyes unwavering. I know we don't normally do speeches at Easter brunch, but since we're all here, I figured it's time to clear something up. His voice calm but sharp. A few months ago, I moved out not because I got a job out of town, not because I fell in love, but because my mother told me I was just a guest in her house. She threw my suitcase down the stairs and told me to go stay somewhere I was wanted. So I did, quietly, respectfully, the yard falling into a heavy silence, his hazel eyes cutting to his MOM, her face red. But that wasn't enough, because instead of owning what happened, my parents started telling people I abandoned them, that I was punishing them, his voice rising. And now they're doing the same to Zoe, spreading lies that she owes them money, that she's using them, that she's the problem. Jake's hazel eyes softening as he motioned Zoe forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Zoe doesn't deserve this, she hasn't done anything wrong, his voice firm. And if you're the kind of person who hears these stories and just nods along without asking for the other side, then maybe you're part of the problem too. The silence stretching for a tense moment, an uncle muttering, I didn't know it was like that, an aunt whispering, she told me you moved for a job, Jake's hazel eyes steady, his mom's jaw clenched. Jake, this isn't the time, her voice tight. Jake's hazel eyes cutting through her. Funny, because when you threw me out, that wasn't the time either, his tone unyielding. He grabbed a slice of quiche from the buffet, sitting back down with Zoe, the rest of the brunch quiet. His parents leaving early, his sister not saying goodbye, Zoe's smile small but real. Thanks, her voice soft, Jake's hazel eyes warm. Always, his reply a promise. Weeks later, Zoe texted him she'd gotten a job at a bookstore, found a sublet. Jake's hazel eyes softening with pride. His parents now budgeting on their own. Their victim act fading. Jake's hazel eyes steady as he blocked their numbers for good. Living his life not as a guest, not as a burden, but as someone who'd finally claimed his own space, free from their shadows, free to be himself.